Hello, everyone. My name is Kevin F. Seiger-Cottoms, and I am proud to be a participant as a workshop presenter for the Kentucky Women in Agriculture 2020 virtual conference. And one of the neat things about us all getting together virtually is that I have decided to take you on a virtual field trip. I'm coming to you live from Gunston, Virginia in Fairfax County, and I am at Gristmill Park. Gristmill Park houses the Green Springs Community Garden, where you have plots that are rented by different individuals in the community that come together to grow whatever it is that they choose to grow. And so one of the things when you talk about my presentation is agriculture plus education times work equals success. And so I brought you out to see the success and the work of those individuals here in the Fairfax County community. I am the owner and operator of Casey's Learning Institute, which is a full service educational support services. So one of the things that I do is I'm not necessarily teaching people the material. I am helping people to understand what they're taught. And so one of the things, a little bit about my background, I went to Virginia Tech for 3 short semesters, and I chose to leave college to start a tutoring business. And I know that sounds kind of weird to individuals who are talking about learning and education, but one of the things that I looked at was college was going to provide me with a wonderful and steady, what I would call, job. But I was looking for a successful business. And one of the big things I realized early on was that if you get started on the path that you want to work on, then really the only thing stopping you is you. And so I took that adage of education doesn't necessarily just happen within the 4 walls of a college or university. It could happen in real life. And so one of the things I'm looking at here in this virtual tour is bringing you the reality of what it takes to maintain and upkeep a communal garden space. And so the neat thing about where I am is that several of the individuals, their personality really kind of rings out. You can tell the work that is put into each space and the love and attention that some people give the space, and then there's other spaces that are a little worse for wear, and I'll say that they have been kind of neglected. One of my hopes is to take a partnership with local schools and bring in maybe the ecology club or the 4-H club or the agriculture or horticulture club and kind of just at least maintain some of the overgrown spaces as a community service project. And I think that would be a wonderful thing to partner schools with the Parks and Rec here in Fairfax County. And that's one of the things that Casey's Learning Institute is working to facilitate as we speak. I worked as a substitute teacher for 15 years with the Prince William County Schools, and now that was probably about 15 years ago, and I look at the time and space that I occupy now as a community concierge, and a lot of what I do is kind of like a broker, if you will. I match up resources and things that people need with those requests of things that people want. So a lot of times people need access to resources and they don't know where to go. They don't know how to facilitate looking up or getting their hands on the things and resources that they need. And so what I do is it's kind of like a matchmaker. I pair up people with others who can really help them grow and benefit from the things that they're looking for in life. And so that's one of the things. It's kind of like I said, as a concierge, a lot of times I do play matchmaker in regards to the resources, and not necessarily always monetary, but resources that students, parents, and individuals within the community need. And so without further ado, I'll go ahead and we'll begin the virtual field trip. So one of the things, the backdrop here is this wonderful, it's not restored, it's actually been taken care of. And so I look at farming, agriculture, and horticulture. And when you look at the two, I kind of look at agriculture and horticulture as cousins. And so their parents are siblings. Because when you think of horticulture, you're thinking of gardening and the upkeep of a, you know, outside space. And when you think of agriculture, you're talking about soil, you're talking about animals, you're talking about livestock, and you're talking about growing food. And so that's one of the things on a much, I will say, a much smaller level in regards to the community gardens because they are individual plots. But when you talk about farming and the history of farming here in the United States, you're talking about something where a lot of people don't give thought to. They go and get their food, and many, I will say, more in today's society, they're much more concerned with where their food is coming from. And so where it's grown, is it organic? And what's funny is my grandparents, my grandfather when he was alive and my grandmother now, she's 95, they live in Lignum, Virginia, which is a very small spot on some maps. And when I look at the history of them moving from Washington, D.C. into the country side, I asked my grandma, I said, well, I thought we were all from, Lignum. And she says, no, we used to live in Washington, D.C., and we bought a farm out in Lignum. It was cheap then. And so I looked at the experience that I had in 8th grade living on my grandmother's farm, and she grew beans, she grew potatoes, she had cows and chickens and a ham shed. And so I understood the importance and the reality of where food comes from and how healthy food keeps us healthy as humans. The activity of growing food and being a part of whether it's the canning process, getting fresh grapes off the vine and making jams and jellies, all of those things became important to me once I lived on my grandmother's farm in 8th grade, and I realized how important it is to keep a healthy lifestyle and how important farming is to our everyday life, because in today's day and age, there's a lot of processed food out there. And one of the things you have to educate yourself on is the process of making sure you're not taking in too much processed food. So that's one of the things that I strongly encourage individuals, even if they don't live in a rural area or, have access to a lot of fresh foods. I constantly am talking about farmers markets and the importance of knowing the different types of fruits and vegetables and produce that work in conjunction with keeping you healthy. And so that's the education aspect of an individual to really know kind of how their health and wellness is preserved. And so as we begin to kind of look at the plots, you see here, some people have raised boxes. In Virginia, there's a lot of Virginia clay, and we're really right down the street from Mount Vernon estate. And so when you look at the history of Mount Vernon, George Washington's home, there was a lot of farming that took place on that property. And so there is a great and vast history here in this area of farming and the history of farming and how it became a part of the American way of life. This individual right here, and I'm starting with this plot right here, is you can tell the love and attention that this individual has placed within their own personal plot. They have built up kind of an area around it to make sure that things are preserved. And they also have a raised bed. Everything from the entrance, they've painstakingly took, and you can tell the detail and the love that they've placed in their particular plot. And so this is a very proud community garden owner here. One of the things, some individuals have kind of cleared out for the season. And so when you look at other plots, although they are bare, there is plans for a raised bed in the next growing season and things of that sort. So that's one of the big things where the personality and the showmanship is what I call it of community plots. This individual has taken doors and placed them above, in regards to getting sun and things of that sort. So this is a complete raised bed. They have chosen not to plant in the earth that is here and the soil that is here. They have brought in raised beds to kind of control their own individual soil. And so the neat thing about taking a walk and going through this community garden is you can see what choices individuals have made in regards to planting. You can see how they've paired certain flowers with other crops and things that they've chosen to plant. Now, one of the big things about kind of taking a tour at this time of year is that the growing season for summer is kind of over, and you see that the tomatoes kind of have done their thing, and the cantaloupe, the squash, they've really kind of run their season. Right here you have a couple of peppers that are still left, and different things that they're growing right in that space right there. One of the important things about educating yourself is what to grow and when to grow it. And so as we look at this tour of this particular areas, we're seeing the transition from the summer into the fall planting season. And so some individuals may or may not take place, or I would say take part in the fall growing season. But one of the beautiful things about Mother Earth is right here, you see a bee. And we've got some marigolds here. And the best thing about having a communal garden space is that you've got different activities taking place in a much smaller confined space. But you can, like I said, you can kind of see that different people have taken different ways of working with different materials and creating a space that is uniquely their own. What is really exciting about the virtual conference this year is that we'll be able to continue the conversation through our social media platforms. One of the things with my Learning Institute, I do plan on creating a page to go in depth about some of the programs that you may have available with your local or statewide Department of Agriculture, your Parks and Rec, different aspects and avenues where you can kind of partner with some local education institutions, whether it's public school or you're looking at a collegiate level. Those individuals studying studying horticulture, you can kind of tap into the newness and excitement of their beginning a career. Right here, you've got a bush that's a little mature. And behind me, you see this goes on for several plots. I would say there's at least 30 here. And many people have taken the time to come out and tend to their gardens and tend to their areas. Like I said, you've got birds out here and bees out here, and that is the beauty of nature. One of the things that when you're looking at also the work of agriculture and horticulture, you realize really soon that if you don't stay on top of it, it can get away from you. And one of the things with taking this virtual tour, you can kind of see that not only do individuals have to keep up with what they're growing, they have to make sure that they're making plans to maintain their areas. And so I'll show you this plot here Once again, this individual has chosen to go with a raised bed, which does help keep and maintain the different areas of what's growing where. It also allows the individual to be able to really keep, I will say, control of what's taking place in the different areas. So one of the things I will point out is that in the wake of a lot of schools and communities responding to COVID-19, there has not been regularly scheduled programs and different things that normally would take place with or without communal assistance. And one of the major aspects of schools is the clubs and activities. And I would strongly encourage you to look into which clubs or activities are active in your area so that you can kind of see what's taking place and kind of tap in to what's happening on your local level so that you can kind of plug into what is taking place on your individual farms. Because one of the things is training and educating a new generation on the importance of agriculture and horticulture and farming, and how that tradition and how that knowledge will be carried on. The big thing now is that many of the individuals who we consider master farmers or master horticulturists or arborists, those individuals are retiring, and a lot of what they know is, I will say, I don't want to say it's going to be lost, but it will go with them. You know, in retirement, many of those individuals choose to speak on different aspects of their professional life, and that is a godsend for individuals who are looking to gain an education about different aspects of horticulture and agriculture. And as I continue to work in education, I realize that many of the older teachers are retiring. And with that comes a loss of the wisdom that a lot of the older generation had. So one of the things is, like I said, as we're taking this walk, I'm just kind of talking with you guys in regards to how education and how agriculture, you know, when you put in the work, you really can gain a certain level of success. What's neat about this one here behind me is this individual has used kind of a piping system. So it's kind of like PVC pipes, if you will. And a lot of what they have chosen to do is create a trellis system where things can grow up and over and really kind of catch the best height on, you've got some beans there, you've got tomatoes there, and you've got many of the crops that would grow, I would say, horizontal. They have chosen to take a vertical approach. So that is a complete different aspect to many of what you see here, because they've just chosen a different way to grow their particular crops. Over here, we have someone who has literally just put down cardboard and kind of a wiring system, and that's kind of just to create a walk space and a walk area amongst and above the ground so that they can have access to the raised beds where they are. And so as we continue our walk, we see that some areas are much more maintained than others. As you see here, I will say that this individual has taken a lot of time and attention on his particular plot, and with little rocks and painted rocks and things of that sort. So you've got dill, you've got basil. So he has a certain amount of herbs growing here, rosemary, and in the different raised garden areas, you can see he has the different crops. The one neat thing about this is he's also put down the covering to make sure that the walk area is accessible, and it kind of keeps the upkeep and maintenance a little lower because there's nothing growing in the walking areas. And one of the neat things about these raised beds is that they have kind of paired a lot of, like I said, there's a herb section. He's kind of paired off those crops that do well with others. And you can kind of see that they've taken the time and attention to understand and acclimate and educate themselves as to which crops grow best together and which ones should not be together. So another area over here, this individual is, I will say, ready for the transition. Although they're not growing anything, they've painstakingly they've cleared off what they need to clear off. And in the back, they've got some beautiful flowers growing, just kind of to keep that visual aesthetic and appeal. One of the things, you can find me on Facebook under Casey's Learning Institute, and also under my personal name. Like I said, I'm planning to keep an ongoing page in regards to discussion of some of the programs and different aspects of your locals and statewide Department of Agricultures. I know you guys are kind of broken up into districts out there in Kentucky, and I see that each district kind of has their own web presence in regards to social media, but that'll be one of the things where the discussions and conversations can continue to go on social media, even though we're not in person being able to discuss those things. One of the things here, we've got someone who has kind of painstakingly put a little bit of love and attention into this garden plot as well. And you can kind of see here, it gives you, giving you a bird's eye view of what they are planning and what their plan is in regards to the trellis. The neat thing about this trellis is they have begun, and it will grow over 2 beds. So each trellis has 2 beds, and it's growing on both sides. So as their crops begin to grow, they will create a natural arc that you can walk through in a walkway. This individual here, to my right, your left, you can tell that the individual flowers and growth of what's here this is a mature plot. It wasn't just started. You can tell that many of the natural marigolds and other flowers, it's perfect for the bees and the butterflies, and this is much more so a combination crops and flowers in regards to that. A lot of blooming flowers and a lot of natural attracting of the pollinators, and so that's really cool. This one here, a little larger than the average one on the end here. They've got a lot of support, created supports for the flowers and crops that are growing here. The neat thing about this one here is you can tell that this individual has paired the flowers along with the crops that are growing, where you have the tomatoes and marigolds, and they work together well. So you can tell that this individual has created a walk area that's kind of mulched in, and a lot of the planted or potted marigolds and flowers along the fence are great for soil control, because like I said, there's a lot of Virginia clay here, and that's one of the things that will take away from your ability to gain a harvest or be able to grow almost anything in Virginia. So that's one of the things that you're looking at in regards to this kind of tour of what's taking place in this communal garden. As we kind of wind down what we're discussing, I would say many of the plots have overgrown because of looking at kind of where they are, and over time some of them have just been neglected. But the beautiful thing about these areas is a little TLC will bring them right back. And one of the things when you talk about what can be taught and what can be done as a community service project, whether it's for a Boy Scout troop or a 4-H club, a ecology club, like I said, a horticulture or an agricultural club, this is something where coming out to one of these communal spaces and kind of, working within, what the requirements of in helping to upkeep and maintain these spaces, that makes for a beautiful community project. And so this is one of the spaces that has just kind of been unkept. I'm sure that no one has rented this in a hot minute. And so that's one of the things where with my Learning Institute and the plans to begin to look at how to facilitate a good partnership that would allow for students to learn from and really apply what they're learning, because one of the biggest things is the practicality of knowledge. And when you look at, although they may be responding in the textbook and in the classroom, when you take that knowledge outside of the classroom and make it practical, that's one of the things that I have worked my entire adult life to kind of really gain, help individuals gain an understanding of what's taking place outside of the classroom with the knowledge that they're gaining in the classroom. So when you talk about the textbook knowledge and what's taking place and how individuals study, well, they can study to the point where they can kind of have a full cup. And one of the things, if you never drink from the cup or you don't pour out the cup, if you keep pouring into it, it will just overflow into the saucer. And so that's one of the things, that the practicality of the knowledge that they're learning, when the rubber hits the road and they're actually out in the real world, they can gain a much better understanding of, what the soil does to different plants, and what the different types of soil, what the different type of fertilizers are, what makes, as far as the sun and how much water plants and crops need in regards to growing properly and flourishing. And so that's one of the things that I'm excited about, because what that does is it allows us to kind of have an understanding of teaching and raising up the next generation. Now, I will say, here's another one here where the trellis has grown into full bloom, and it has some great shading. There's also raised beds here. The neat thing about when you take education beyond the four walls of a classroom, you can kind of look at the geometry of what's taken place and how the raised boxes are constructed. Construction tech. There's so many different aspects of a community garden that can be beneficial to everyone. And when you take the educational aspect of it, we'll kind of end with this one. Here we have, it's a pollinator. And so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to turn the camera around if I can. I probably can't. But it's a pollinator habitat. And it says this area has been planted with pollinator-friendly flowers and is protected from pesticides to provide valuable habitat for bees and other pollinators. And it says, to learn how you can help bring back the pollinators, please visit. It's xerxes.org. And so that's one of the things with this last space that I'm looking at here. This is a pollinator habitat. And so it has a lot of natural pollinators, and to the naked eye you're like, wow, this spot's really overgrown. But it was specifically put here on the edge to be a pollinator habitat, and so that's one of the things that is kind of keeping those pollinators doing their work. And so as we wrap up this kind of virtual field trip, it's been great. I hope that you have enjoyed seeing our little community garden here. And I hope that you're enjoying the virtual conference and learning a lot. Until next time when we can continue, like I said, until next time when we continue the conversation, whether it be on social media, on Facebook, on Instagram, or Twitter, I do encourage you to continue those conversations so that we can all keep in touch with one another and learn from each other, because agriculture plus education times work equals success. Thank you so much.